Oh, all right. Yes. Okay, so folks, welcome to the last in AWS meetup on cloud security using AWS Security Hub. We're very lucky to have Ankit Rao. Am I saying that right?
Yeah, it's Rao. That's correct. Rao is
Okay,
correct.
cool.
Yeah.
Excellent. I'm gonna share. You can share. And I'd say take it away. In general, would say, folks, if you have questions, put them in the chat, and I'll try to monitor the chat, or just jump in, because we like to be interactive.
Yeah, true. Same here. I mean, I want this to be maybe a normal talk, interactive talk, basically, not a one-way discussion going around. So yeah, okay. So hi, folks. Ankit here. So today we are going to talk about CSPM using AWS Security Hub, right? So before moving ahead, so here is a brief introduction about me. So I work as a senior software engineer at Zscaler. So I'm more into DevSecOps technologies. So I'm an AWS certified solution architect. I have to recertify, but I have done it. Recently expired, that's it. And I'm an AWS community builder. So, and I'm from Pune, India. So it's around 4:30 a.m. in the morning here. So
Oh my
good
God.
morning from my end, and maybe a good evening, right, for you folks, right? So yeah, moving ahead. I'll cover a short agenda for what today's talk is. So we'll start with the basic introduction of cloud. I guess everyone here is aware of cloud, but we'll still have a brief diagram and then maybe talk about the cloud service providers, cloud security in general. Then we'll move towards what cloud security posture management is. That this word is trending, right? So what we'll try to figure out what that exactly is. We'll go through how AWS Security Hub is helping users to achieve or maybe have a CSPM product with them. We'll have the Security Hub demo, a very brief demo. We'll try to cover major things, and then we'll have the Q&A. The questions can come in. I mean, I don't mind having questions in middle of the presentation, so we can go ahead with that. Okay. Now, the motivation behind the talk. So I like to talk about this a lot. So as you all may be aware, right, the global cloud market as well as the security that comes within has been growing a lot, and this is the estimate that the cloud security market would be around 13 billion, right? And there is still a lack of awareness about cloud security among small and medium-sized organizations, and and I mean, not with small and medium, but with most of them fear that they lose their data or something like that. So there are a lot of high risk factors and a lot of in education, maybe I would say, in the market with regards to cloud security. And this is where I like to explore the security aspects of cloud a lot. So that's the only motivation I have, and that we have the data to support it as well. So the biggest cloud security threats are mostly due to misconfigurations of cloud platform, so wherein the CSPM comes into picture, which helps us identify these misconfigurations well. So that's the motive. So moving ahead, so we'll start with the introduction to cloud. So a basic introduction how cloud works. So everyone knows that we have the internet. There are some data centers, and then we as users consume the cloud over the internet, or maybe whatever services that the cloud service providers like Amazon, Azure, Google, Salesforce provide over the internet, right? And what is cloud security? So basically securing whatever we are using is cloud security. So in this case, since we are using cloud services, so securing cloud is what is cloud security in very simple terms. Now in this case of cloud, so cloud security becomes a shared responsibility model, and everyone knows the reason, but I'll just spin up this diagram here. So why is cloud security a shared responsibility model? So since in this case, the hardware components of whatever we are using, right? They are with the cloud service providers. So, but obviously the security of that we cannot take, we cannot do anything about that. So that's the CSP's, job or responsibility of the security, means for the security of the cloud, right? So in very clear terms, we are responsible for security in the cloud, whereas CSP are responsible for security of the cloud. So why do we say this, right? So now suppose we are using a certain AWS service, maybe a storage bucket, right? And whatever backend it has been secured by AWS, and we here are exposing the bucket to the public. So in this case, we can't blame AWS, right? Because we are the one who have exposed the bucket on the over the internet, and we can't blame AWS saying that I had a data theft or a data loss or a breach, because it is us who configured it incorrectly and not AWS. Because in this case, AWS is just taking care security of the cloud, that is whatever backend is there, the hardware component there, whereas we have to basically make sure whatever we are using, we are configuring it properly. So that's what cloud security is, and this is how it is a shared responsibility model, right? So I'll pause here for a moment. This was all very basic stuff, so but still we'll wait for if there are any questions from the audience. And again, if there are any issues with my voice, or maybe there are some voice interruptions, please let me know, right?
No, it all sounds good, and this is sort of exactly I like the running start, help people who are just starting get up to speed, but it all sounds good.
Right. Great. Yeah, that's the major objective. So I just wanted to cover every facet of the audience. So just started from the basics, right? So okay, I see there are no questions, so we'll move ahead, right? So now we'll move ahead with cloud security posture management. So what exactly is cloud security posture management, and why is it trending, right? So basically it's as per the definition by Gartner, it's a continuous process of cloud security improvement and adoption to reduce the likelihood of successful threat. So since cloud is a new thing, right? It's new with respect to security, right? Because it's a constantly changing architecture infrastructure in the backend. Things doesn't work as a standalone or maybe an in-house server that we have, because we have a lot more control there. So since cloud is a new concept and it has to be addressed, various constantly changing cloud infrastructure changes need to be addressed. So the security posture keeps changing, and it's a new blend that we need to add. So that's where security posture management comes into picture. And CSPM basically helps the user with three major things. So one is developing and enforcing end-to-end security policies, right? So to talk in detail about this, so basically what CSPM does is it provides a set of guidelines that the user should follow while configuring things on cloud, right? So just to give a very simple example, so maybe a CSPM policy would say that your S3 bucket should be encrypted, or maybe your IAM user should have MFA enabled. These are very simple things to do, but most users maybe when they start off, they'll not take care of that, or maybe not give much attention to that. But these misconfigurations, these little misconfigurations is what cause the security breaches. So this is what CSPM helps in. It helps in developing and enforcing end-to-end security policies. Then we have risk and vulnerability assessment and risk visualization. So this is another important aspect. So we'll talk about vulnerability assessment first. So what exactly are vulnerabilities? So we are good with the security policies now. We have implemented everything with respect to cloud. But the applications that we are using, we use a lot of libraries. We use a lot of third-party applications as well, which come in with their own set of bugs, or maybe some loopholes through which a breach can happen. So such things is what we call a vulnerability. So it can be anything. I guess a very good example of a vulnerability was the Log4j vulnerability that recently created havoc. So that was a very good example. So it was maybe a Apache based logging service vulnerability that we came across. So that is what vulnerability is. So CSPM also helps us identify that. And then it gives us a risk visualization. So what risk visualization here means is like it will help us visualize the risk in terms of the criticality aspects, how often that can occur, and maybe give us some trends that how likely that is to happen. So just to give an example, the risk may be categorized as in very simple terms, low, medium, high, critical, based on what impact it can have to your infrastructure, or what impact the breach, in case if it happens, can have on your infrastructure or maybe your data or whatever application you're running. So that is one important aspect that CSPM helps us with. And then the last, it helps in compliance monitoring and DevOps integration, right? So what is compliance monitoring here? Uh, I mean, when we talk about these policies, so where do these policies come from, and what actually are we mapping it to, or maybe what we are, are we comparing it to a certain standard or something like that? So yes, that's the answer. So compliance monitoring helps in, providing a view with respect to a certain security standard. So we may be, I mean, many of us may be aware of certain standards, right? I mean, we were talking in the breakout rooms as well about standards like CIS, that is the Center for Internet Security. Then we have, domain-based standards. So for healthcare, we have standards like Hipaa, and then for banking and finance sector, we have the PCI DSS standards. So these guys, or maybe these bodies, these organizations have set up a certain set of rules that one should follow. So say Hipaa had given a set of guidelines regarding the patient data and everything, that where the data should be stored, the confidentiality of the data. So all these aspects, I mean, CSPM gives us a view with respect to that. That say maybe a certain statement or maybe certain standard says that this is a set of rules that you need to be followed. So CSPM will give you a simplified version of that, and you can basically map it to maybe a resource configuration, which you can directly go and implement and have maybe things in alignment with the certain standard like Hipaa or maybe any other, right?
Can I jump in for a second? We've got a question in the chat.
Sure.
How does CSPM differ from CIS?
Oh, okay, that's a good question. So CSPM is more than, I mean, is a broader version, I would say. So CIS is a a cyber security benchmark, which just provides guidelines with respect to a certain domain. So as I said, cyber security is what its forte is, and it mostly works into that. Whereas CSPM is a broader picture. It will not only cover CIS, I mean, it will try to cover all CIS guidelines as well as all the other standards as well that are there in the market. So CSPM will try to incorporate all the guidelines, maybe give the user a view with respect to all the standards, whereas CIS is a is a specific standard with respect to cybersecurity. So I hope that answers the question. Okay, so moving ahead, I guess the next slide we had was that only. Okay. So just wanted to display or maybe talk about a few cloud security and compliance standards. So we talked about say CIS, we talked about NIST as well. So NIST is the one which mostly provides us with the vulnerability data. So we have the PCI DSS one, which is for the financial sector. It talks about the cardholder information and other aspects. Hipaa is for healthcare security. Again, I mean, these are most of these are global standards, but there are regional standards as well, right? So China has its own security policies. So CSPM will help us generate a view for that as well. And then maybe many European Union have their own set of standards. India has its own set of standards. So these standards, I mean, these are the compliance standards, and CSPM helps us achieve this cloud compliance, referring our configuration data to these compliance standard, mapping those, and providing us easy to understand view of what we should do to achieve compliance with respect to these standards. So I hope I'm able to convey that what CSPM is trying to do here. Okay, so maybe again we'll have a short pause. I see a few chat messages. Yeah, okay. We'll pause still. We'll still pause for questions if there are any. Else we'll move ahead.
Just for folks who don't know, what does NIST stand for?
Sorry.
Just for folks who may not know, what does NIST stand for?
Okay, so NIST stands for National Institute of Security, National Institute of Standard. I mean,
Standards and testing.
Standards and Tech. Yeah,
Okay.
National Institute of Standards and Tech. Yeah. So
Okay.
I'll maybe I don't recollect all of this. I
Yeah.
had written down those for this specific purpose. So maybe I'll try to cover all. So CIS is Center for Internet Security. NIST, as I said, is National Institute of Standards and Tech. Then we have the PCI DSS, which is Payment Card Industry Data Security Standard. So the name itself indicates that it's a fintech related standard. Then we have Hipaa. So Hipaa is Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act. So this, I guess, is a regional standard for US based folks, right? So I guess you guys will be aware of this already. So this is a standard for US with respect to healthcare. Okay. Yeah. So I guess we'll move ahead. Yeah. So now we talked a lot about CSPM. So what was in it for AWS, right? AWS had to come up with something just to to attract maybe audience with respect to, I mean, because as we talked about the insecurity between organizations to move to cloud, right? So major concern is security, and if the CSPs are themselves offering some security tools, helping them out in making sure that it's not that insecure, and it's up to you how secure you make it. So this is what AWS's answer was to CSPM. They introduced this service called AWS Security Hub. So Security Hub, as it says, is a cloud security posture management service that is offered by AWS. So it performs the security best practices check, aggregate alerts, and enable automated remediation. Right. So today we are going to talk about how it is performing the security best practice checks, how is it aggregating alert, and how is it helping us in remediating the things or remediating the policies that it has displayed or maybe given a view of us, given a view of. So we'll talk about how does it work, right? So this is just a diagram from the AWS documentation. So AWS Security Hub, how it works is it will collect all the information from all the AWS services that are available. So the core component for AWS Security Hub to work is AWS Config. So those who are not aware of AWS Config, so I'll just talk about it in a brief. We'll also have it in the demo because it's the core component. So AWS Config service is a configuration recorder service in AWS. What it simply does is it will record all the configuration related data for all the services in your account. It's a regional service, so wherever you enable it, it will collect data only for that service. And when I say configuration recording or maybe collecting of configuration, it just means that the config service will collect the metadata related to all the configuration settings or maybe all the settings that you use. So for example, while you create an instance, it will ask you maybe it will ask you regarding the SKU that you want to use, the tier that you want to use, maybe T2 micro, large, X large, whatever you want to use. It will ask you about the VPCs. It will ask you about the subnets that you want to use. It will ask you about the security groups. So these are all the components used when you create an EC2 instance. What config simply does is it will record it in it will record all these configurations. So that's what it does. Yeah.
Will it actually dive into, if you've got a virtual server, will it dive into the server configuration for for example, for like CIS, it's got a bunch of configuration settings for the configuration within a Linux server. Is it going to dive in and do comparisons against that, or is it only the AWS elements?
Right. So config will not dive into your machine. I mean, it will not check the application level things. It will just be checking the things that are available through AWS. I mean, all the AWS related aspects, that is what config will monitor. It doesn't dive into your systems. Okay. Yeah, I hope that answered your query.
Yes, thank you.
Right. So, I mean, I'll add to it. So, what you want here is maybe scanning of your application running inside your VM, right? Maybe, or an instance. So for that, we have a service called as Amazon Inspector. So what Inspector does is it installs an Amazon Inspector agent inside your virtual machine or an EC2 instance, and it will collect all the logs. So it currently supports 4 packages, out of which one is a normal security best practices package, which will actually talk about the external settings like the security group configurations. The second package is the CIS package. So what it does is it will compare your OS settings with respect to the CIS standard that is available. So CIS has released various standards with respect to OSs. So they are known as baseline configuration standards. So what they do is they talk about the best practices that you need to follow. I mean that your system or the VM or instance that you're using, the operating system needs to follow. So it will provide you details of that, and then it will also provide you vulnerability checks. So basically, whatever vulnerabilities are residing inside your VM, it will provide you all the details as well. So we have a service for that, but it's AWS Amazon Inspector, right? So Security Hub can also ingest data from Amazon Inspector, so that's a good news for us. The second service I was going to cover today was Amazon Inspector, luckily. So there are a lot of integrations available, and this is a huge topic to discuss. So based on the feedback, maybe we'll talk about it later as well. Maybe we'll try to have another session where we'll be talking mostly about the integrations and automation of things. But yeah, I mean, today's session we'll try to confine it to Inspector, Config, and Security Hub. Okay, so I'll get back to where I was. So what Security Hub simply does is, so first component is the config. So the configuration recorder has to be on. That is the first prerequisite that you have. So based on the data from config, it will map the configuration data to certain security standards, and it will provide you a view, a CSPM view, basically, of what actions need to take. You'll have to take, right? Other than that, it also provides integrations with other AWS services, right? And it also provides integrations with third-party CSPM providers. So in case you feel that Security Hub is not providing you insufficient data, so in that case, you can also integrate AWS Security Hub with the third-party CSPM providers, right? So once you have Security Hub enabled, it will provide you, automated checks, and it will provide you a centralized view. Based upon the view that you have, it will provide you some cases, and you can take action based on that, right? So you can notify teams, or you can take action yourself. So that's how Security Hub works. Any queries on Security Hub before we move on to the demo? Okay, so I'll take that as a no. We'll move towards the demo. So
actually, there's a question. Okay. You mentioned about third-party integration. Is it possible to integrate Splunk with Security Hub?
We'll check that out. I mean, I'm not sure of Splunk. So Splunk, I guess yes, but we'll have to check. We'll check that in the integration section itself. So that's what demo is for, because there are a lot of unknowns as well. So I know integrations of CSPM tools that is possible, but Splunk, I'm sure it is, but we'll check that out. Okay. Okay, so we'll go ahead with the demo. So on the screen that you're seeing now is a Security Hub that is already enabled. What I'll do is I'll duplicate a screen and go to a region where I have not enabled Security Hub. We'll go from the start. And similarly, I'll go to a region where config is not enabled. Okay, so this is how the Security Hub screen looks when you have, when you are going or maybe trying to start it up first. So it will, this is the first basic prerequisite that it asks for. So it says that you should enable AWS config. It provides you the reason as well. So since I said config is the only service in AWS that has, the configuration data in a very detailed format stored, and it collects the same. And that is the data source for config is what I would say. AWS config also has certain, high level services or maybe high level offerings like various controls it has. It also provides its own controls. So those can also be ingested to Security Hub. So basically Security Hub uses configuration data from config to come up with a CSPM view, as well as it will integrate all the findings that config itself has as well into the console that it has. Okay, so we'll go with respect to what it says. So it says you have to enable config. So in the same region, I'll have to enable config as well. Okay, so this is how the config screen looks when we have not enabled it. So it's just a one-click setup. When we say get started, we have to enter all these details. So config again is a region-based service, as I said. So these are the basic settings it will ask for. So you can record all supported region resources in the region, or you can also specify certain sets of resources that you want to record. So with respect to security, it is recommended that you always choose the first option, that you record all the resources, because the view of security we want is complete. We don't want a security view with respect to a certain set of resources only. We want a view which is covering all resources and providing us data of all resources. So this is what is recommended. Then you can use an existing config service linked role. So service linked role is basically to give all the related calls to all the services. So that's what this role is used for. Then there is the delivery method. So all these logs can also be stored in an S3 bucket, right? And you can also stream configuration changes and notifications to an Amazon SNS topic. So when I talk about config, so it has an entire timeline of your resource. So say you create an S3 bucket today and enable config. So basically it will, the first thing it will do is collect the data. It will say that yes, your account has one S3 bucket. Tomorrow you go in and you say update the versioning settings or the encryption settings, right? So config will also record that, and it will create a timeline that say on 20th you created the S3 bucket. On 1st of Jan, you updated the versioning and the security settings. So that's how beautifully config works. It stores the entire timeline of your resource, right? And that's it. I guess that's the only setup that we need to do. We click on next. And this is what I was talking about. So config 2 has its own set of rules. So suppose you have to, implement certain set of rules on certain set of resources that they need to be created in a certain way only. So whenever someone creates a bucket, encryption should be enabled. That's what your primary criteria is. Okay. Or whenever someone creates an IAM user, you should check the MFA checkbox. That's what your criteria is. So you can select from rules that are available here. So this will give you a view with respect to that whatever is created, has it followed this rule or not? So it will give you that view. That is what rules are for. We'll not talk about rules today because it's a broader topic and we want to talk about Security Hub more. And then we just confirm and create it, right? So when we create it, simply the recording starts from the AWS configs point of view. So the initial recording may take up to 24 hours is what the documentation says, but it does it quite quickly as well. So when you initially enable config, if you notice here, it says that your resources are being discovered. Okay, so this is what the basic config setup we need. So we'll go to a config which is actually already enabled. So in this region, I've already enabled config. And this is how the view of config looks like. It will provide you all the details of all the resources that reside in your account in this particular region, that is North Virginia, because I have enabled it only in this region. I'll go to the buckets to just to show how basically it's saving or maybe showing us the data. So first of all, it will show us data in a normal form. This also shows compliance status as well. So basically, this is supporting some rule sets, as I said. So Security Hub is an actual CSPM tool, whereas config 2 provides certain set of rules. And when we go on a certain bucket, so if you notice here, it has the entire configuration JSON, which tells us all the details of the bucket, as well as we have the resource timeline, which tells us when the bucket was created, what events, what configuration change has occurred, when it has occurred. It's a very beautiful view that config provides. So a lot to talk about config, but I'll stop here about config. I'll pause for questions if anyone has on this basic setup of config. So I'll take that question. So I guess it's a question from Adepali. So what he's saying that can config send out alerts if a certain configuration is not set, right? So yes, this can be done. So as I said, the rules that we have in config can help us do that, and then we can integrate it with say SNS to send out a notification when a certain rule is not followed. So again, I'll leave it here because it's a very broad topic and we want to cover Security Hub, but I hope that answers the query. Okay. So any further questions on config setup? This is just a prerequisite that we had to follow. That's why I covered config in brief. Okay. I'm guessing there are no questions, so I'll move to Security Hub. So once that is enabled, Security Hub then asks for which security standards you need to enable. So currently, this is a limitation. Security standards supported by Security Hub are limited. They only support 3 standards, and out of that, only 2 are recognized standards. That is CIS and PCI DSS. This one is the AWS Foundational Security Best Practices, which is curated by their own experts. It too has good security policies, but we want we want authentic standards or maybe recognized standards accepted globally. So that's a little drawback as of now, but AWS surely will come up with newer benchmarks integration shortly. And we just simply enable Security Hub. That's as simple as that. Okay. So again, this will take some time to configure data, collect data, and come up with a view. Until then, we'll again move on to Security Hub, which already has pre-populated data. Okay, so this is how the Security Hub provides your view. So very easy to understand. So provides view with respect to security standards. So for CIS Foundation benchmarks, it's currently 27%, PCI DSS it's 67%, and AWS Foundational Security it's 85%. So how it is calculating that? So it's calculating it against the security policies that it supports. So since it has, say, the foundation's benchmark has a total of 41 policies, 11 of those have passed for my account, whereas 30 of them have failed. So that's how it's calculating it. Also, it provides us a view with respect to the most failed security checks. So if a particular resource is failing for a lot of security checks, so that is this view here. So currently, I guess most of the account related policies are failing because this is a new demo account that I recently set up. So I've not followed it for the purpose of the demo. I'll surely do that after the demo. Then there is this bucket which has a lot of failed checks and everything else, right? Similarly, it gives us a view with respect to findings per region. So currently we just have one region configured, so it's providing me findings with respect to that region. We can aggregate findings. We'll come to that later. It provides a very good other types of insights as well, right? So with respect to S3 buckets with the most findings, resource specific findings count. So which resource, from a certain resource type, which resource has the most number of findings? Okay. And yeah, that's a lot of it, right? So it's a very good view that Security Hub provides. We'll go through the advanced settings now. What the advanced settings basically do is it helps you aggregate data. So now, I used to call this a big drawback with respect to the security service, that it is regional. What I feel is that security services must be global because it should have coverage of all the accounts, and it should not ask user to set up it. It should be a global setup that should collect data from all regions. But sadly, AWS believes in a region based service policy, so all or most of their services are region based. So but at least they introduce this aggregator concept. So what aggregator does is it will aggregate data from all the regions if you want to in a single place. So suppose you enable Security Hub in North Virginia and you enable it in all other AWS regions, and you still want a centralized view. So what you can do is you can configure a finding aggregation. You can select all the regions that you want to aggregate. Okay, so you can select all the regions, and in North Virginia you'll find a centralized view of findings from all the regions. So this is one good feature that was recently introduced in Security Hub. Other aspect is the account integration. So suppose you are a large organization and you are maintaining all your AWS accounts using AWS organization setup. So you can add all those accounts here. Okay, and you'll have a centralized view with respect to all the accounts in your organization. So these two are some cool aggregators that Security Hub recently introduced, so that we have a singular view for all of that. The setup pane is there. I mean, we'll still have to set up in each individual account, but at least that after that one-time setup, we can all basically have a centralized view from a single region. So that at least have been improved. Okay, so before moving ahead to explore Security Hub further, I'll pause for questions. Okay.
Ankit, what's the I guess the update frequency on this? I mean, because so you've got layers of scanning going on.
Correct.
You're scanning in the regions, and then the aggregator's got to pull that together. What's the delay? I mean, are we talking like it's not worth checking more than once a day, or is that a configurable thing that you can kind of get?
So yeah, that comes a part of the Security Hub limitations. So currently it's not configurable, and it is set at I guess it's set at 12 hours. I mean, the update frequency is 12 hours. I mean, the security findings update frequency is 12 hours. The aggregator updates are I mean, on the fly. I mean, they are real-time updates, because what aggregators do is they'll just maybe display data what is available in other accounts. So basically, if you say in some other region like Oregon, right? So if it is showing a 70% score, it will blindly display it here. Aggregator doesn't do anything on its own. It is just aggregating findings. That's it. But the actual Security Hub, the scan frequency is 12 hours. I mean, it updates itself per 12 hours is what the documentation says. They are improving on it. I mean, because this is a big concern for us. This is I am always in check with the support team of AWS, and through the community contributions we have. So the aggregator request also, I mean, I was the one who again initiated it. I mean, not only me, but I too did my part there. Then this is the second request that we have, that maybe users can demand on-demand scan, right? Because most of the third-party CSPM products, they have an on-demand scan, wherein the user can scan their account at a click of a button, and then they'll have the updated data accordingly, right? Or they can schedule it. I mean, they can set a scan frequency. But for Security Hub, currently we don't have that feature, sadly.
Okay, thank you.
It would seem like that's just putting on my little security hat. You know, I could well imagine not necessarily wanting to change the frequency, but wanting to kick one off now. You know, I get a phone call, someone's telling me that something bad is going on. Okay, I want to run the scan right now.
Correct, true.
Yeah, I can imagine. I'm thinking along the same lines, Brian. I'm sitting here and I'm going, okay, I'm making some changes to my expectation. I want to know, I've put in 3 or 4 or 5 or a dozen new rules, right, that are specific to me, and now I want to kick it off. I don't want to basically hit those rules and then go, okay, I'll come back tomorrow and start working on remediation. I'd like to be able to at least kick it off for a specific server, if not for everything. Right, or for a specific resource.
True. But what my thought towards this is like, I mean, security is a secondary business for CSPs, right? So they introduced it just to make sure, they are covering that aspect of cloud as well. But I mean, what I believe, or maybe the general belief is that CSPM won't completely deep dive into it, but later on they'll have to, but currently they are not. And this is not only with AWS. I mean, I have worked on Azure and GCP as well. So even their security CSPM solutions that they have, they don't have the scan now option available as of now. So in Azure, we have the Azure Defender. So it still doesn't have the scan now option. And in GCP too, we have a service called Security Command Center. So it's, I mean, for GCP, it's very initial, I mean, a very initial stage for them. So they support very less data at the first place, and they don't have the scan option as well. Same case is with Azure. So I hope they come up with it soon, because that's the need of the hour. And security breaches don't, tell you before coming. They have to be identified before. I mean, the misconfigurations. I mean, it's better to be, protective than being reactive, right? In case of security, that's the principle, or maybe that's what I believe. So being protective is always better than being reactive, because when you are hoping on being reactive, there is a high chance that the damage has already been done, right? So being protective is always better. Okay, so we'll
We had a
move
question
ahead
from
with the
Saved.
Yeah, hi, Ankit. I just wanted to understand how does guard duty play in come into picture here? Is guard duty, do we need to turn on guard duty as a prerequisite for Security Hub, or is guard duty findings integrated into Security Hub?
right.
That's my first question. And the second question, since you brought up Azure, how does, in terms of features and feature set, what's your thoughts on Azure Sentinel versus Security Hub? Because I've seen companies which have multi-cloud. They try to send guard duty logs, security logs into Sentinel, and have one single plane of view, things like that. What do you see from your experience working with other vendors and customers when you have multi-cloud? What's the because we are also like looking into third-party solutions, like since we have AWS is our largest footprint. We have other clouds, but looking into Orca, which is a new player in this market, and where do you see the third-party security players in this space? Thank you.
Right. Okay, great. So we'll come to the first question first. So guard duty is not a mandatory requirement for Security Hub. So it's better you enable it. The integration is possible. So in integrations, you'll see that by default it is enabled. You can disable it, but guard duty integration is possible, and you'll be able to see guard duty findings if you have enabled it in the appropriate account in Security Hub as well. So that was about the first question. The second question is comparing AWS Security Hub with, say, Azure Sentinel or the Azure Defender. So, I mean, you are right. Not recently, but a while back, Azure Defender, or what we called it as Azure Security Center earlier, provided an integration with Security Hub. So the main, my thoughts on that is like, the multi-cloud is the way to go. I mean, most of the organizations I have been working with, they too prefer multi-cloud options. So with multi-cloud, there comes a need that the folks or the organizations will need a centralized view for all their clouds, right? It's not like they'll set up things on maybe say only AWS or only Azure or only GCP, right? They want a centralized view for all their clouds. So in that case is where the third-party CSPM vendors come into picture. So that's where they are making the money, right? They are providing a centralized view with respect to all your clouds, irrespective of cloud service provider. So that is one advantage that third-party providers have. But I mean, CSPs too will try to come into the market, because this is a big market. So once they are done with maybe their primary service of providing cloud service, they may jump into the security domain as well. I mean, we are seeing a lot of advances from all the CSPs with respect to the security advancements or bringing in security products. AWS launched flurry of security products, right? I guess there was some detector service introduced. A lot of security tools are coming up. Similarly with Azure as well, they are integrating a lot of security services with Defender, and I mean Sentinel is also there. They are also trying to integrate findings from multi-cloud solutions like AWS Security Hub. So what I feel is multi-cloud is the future going ahead, and I mean there will be advancements made wherein the CSPs too themselves will try to have a centralized view with respect to this security. So I hope that answers your query, and that were my thoughts on maybe how it stands with respect to Security Hub and all the CSP based native security tools.
Yeah, thank you, Ankit. I just wanted to get a feel of what you see since you work for a security firm. Thank you.
Okay, so moving ahead with the Security Hub portal overview. So one tab says security standards. So this tab will provide you a view of the security policies with respect to standards. So I guess the most interesting one would be the PCI DSS to explore, right? So we'll go ahead with that. I guess most folks are into fintech, so I too like fintech a lot. So we'll explore what this is. So this basically will have this type of a view. It will say all enabled, meaning how many policies or how many controls has it scanned for, the number of failed policies, meaning that a certain policy or control has failed, it doesn't have a compliant resource in it. Then the past resources, wherein I mean our configuration of a particular resource is perfectly in alignment with respect to PCI DSS. Very easy to understand, right? I mean, when someone would have said that your infrastructure must be compliant to PCI DSS, it would be very difficult for you to sort out I mean, you'll have to first read what PCI DSS is, what what solutions it's offering, or maybe what is it saying with respect to security. But this, if you notice the titles of the services or policies, it's very easy to understand. So the first one says hardware MFA should be enabled. Very easy to understand. Virtual MFA should be enabled for the root user. Again, we all know how to enable MFA, right? So two-factor authentication is the need of the hour, and I guess most apps as well have introduced that. So we all know that. With respect to security groups, it says that security groups should not allow ingress from 0.0.0.0, meaning it should not be open to internet. Again, very easy to understand. And how we get to know which resources are failing. So when you click on that policy, we see that there are three security groups in our account. So out of which two are failed. So meaning two security groups have a rule which says that it is open to internet. I can show you that as well if I navigate to my EC2 console. So this is, I guess, yeah, we have a hyperlink as well. I'll directly go here. So if you check the inbound rules of this security group, if you notice, these are open to internet. So that's security misconfiguration, right? This is how attacks happen. We are keeping our ports open to internet, high chances of us getting attacked, right? So this is a very simple, easy to understand view that Security Hub provides, that I mean go and basically remediate it, right? It also provides the set of remediation instructions. So if you don't know how to remediate that, just click on that. It will redirect to the AWS documentation page. So how to remediate, it will clearly specify the settings, like how to remove port 22 from a security group, or maybe make it not public to internet. So it will navigate to the console, then the security groups, then select the security group, and then edit the inbound rules. So very easy to understand remediation steps, which anyone, I guess, can follow, right? So this is one aspect of the security standards tab. It provides you a view with respect to security standards. I mean, what I understand is AWS will be adding many more security standards, because these are not sufficient. Because someone from healthcare may say that I want Hipaa, and they can't be just compliant with a certain CIS or PCI DSS, because that's of no use to them. They want to be in compliance with respect to Hipaa standard. So accordingly, I mean, AWS will most probably add new standard support here. Okay. Moving to the insights. So insights, I guess we talked about them on the summary page. It provides you insights about the findings. So resources with the most findings, or maybe buckets with the read-write permissions. AMIs that are generating the most findings. So these are the types of insights that it is providing. So once the findings are generated, this view, the insights view, provide you maybe specific findings specific to a certain resource, the higher count, I mean the resources with a higher count of findings or something like that, right? And the critical aspects as well are illustrated here. Okay, then the actual findings page. So what is this? So this again, this will have an aggregated finding list that we have, the extensive finding list. So the three tabs that we covered till now, they were specific to certain security standards, specific to certain insights. But this findings tab will have findings from all the integrations that you have done with Security Hub. So maybe I'll check if there are any inspector findings. Inspector. Sadly, there are no active findings, so we'll remove it. So basically, it will have all the findings from all the integrations that are available. So currently, we just have Security Hub findings from Security Hub. So it's just showing us that, and these are the same findings that we found in security standards. So these are the actual findings, and what Security Hub helps us with the CSPM functionality is it maps these findings to the security standards, so that we know, I mean, which finding is important to which specific security benchmark, and maybe we can work towards that, right? So again, very similar view, but here we have some more data, right? And then we have the remediation options as well. So that's about findings. And then we have the integrations tab. So I guess we'll talk about the guard duty integration as well. So if you notice here, by default, it is enabled. So if you see, it is accepting findings, but I don't have guard duty enabled on my account. So you'll not see any guard duty findings in Security Hub. So it's a two-way thing. Anything you want to integrate, so the other service should also be enabled for obvious reasons. So these are all in-house security tools with which Security Hub provides integration. And then if you talk about third-party tools as well, right? So yeah, we wanted to check Splunk as well. So it should be there because we have Barracuda. So we'll just check for Splunk. So yeah, we have Splunk integration as well. So I was quite sure it's there, but just we confirmed it from the existing tab itself, right? So all this data will be summarized and displayed and maybe mapped to certain security standards and displayed in an easy to read format on Security Hub. So that's how it works. And maybe pause here if there are any queries that we have till this point. Okay.
And I'll just say, if people are dropping off, we put in the chat our post meeting survey. We really encourage you to check that out if you have to drop, but we can continue.
Right. Okay. And to end with, I mean, we'll just have a brief of the AWS Inspector. Maybe we can have a separate session if the audience demands. But when you talk about the internal security aspects, so till now the CSPM aspect was covering only the external security, that is cloud-based. But CSPM is also responsible for providing you details of your applications running on cloud. Okay, so for that, the one service that AWS has is AWS Inspector. It will scan things inside your virtual machines or your EC2 instances. It will go through the vulnerabilities, and it will also go through the OS baseline standards that are to be followed. So you'll have findings by vulnerability, by instance, and whatnot. I'm not sure why I'm not seeing the instances here, but we have few instances here. Yeah. So currently it has okay, currently it's still scanning because I spinned up these instances yesterday. And this is a newer inspector. I mean, this is Inspector version 2. Earlier we had the classic inspector, which was a bit difficult to configure. Maybe we can have a standalone session on that for configuration. But yeah, I mean, that is what the gist of inspector is. It will actually scan things inside your, actually scan your application as well, or maybe things inside your virtual machine and not just the external configuration. Okay, so that's from the demo perspective. We'll move back to our slide. So I had just had this documented in case there were some issues with the demo. So this is what we went through the demo, right? So we'll go through it again. So Security Hub, these are the Security Hub features. It provides the automated and continuous security best practice check. So continuous meaning it is scanning itself after every 12 hours. So we'll call that continuous. We have the security standards aligned to regulatory and industry compliance benchmarks. So we have the CIS and the PCI DSS standard now. We have consolidated findings. So with the aggregator, we can consolidate all our findings. We have security scores and summary, and we have a single standardized data format. So if you noticed, all the data format was in a singular way, easy to understand way, and it was common across all the findings, right? So overview of the findings. So these are the standard CSPM offerings. So whenever we talk about CSPM, this is what we talk about. So CSPM will provide you details of lack of encryption on databases, storage, application traffic, and every aspect where encryption comes into picture, may it be data in transit or the static data that you have. Then the improper encryption management, overall liberal account permission. So it will also talk about over liberal permission. So suppose you have an user who is just supposed to read data from S3 bucket, and you are giving him admin access. So that is again liberal account permissions, right? So you are giving, instead of giving him S3 full access, supposedly you are giving him admin access, which may lead to a mishap. So if his credentials are maybe compromised, that may gain that may help gain the hacker access into your entire account unnecessarily, right? Whereas it should ideally be just on S3, but because of this over liberal permissions, that is what happened. Then MFA is again important. So there have been a lot of cases reported saying that the account takeover happened because there was no MFA and the credentials got compromised. So with MFA, we at least have a two-factor authentication, and we have to enter a certain security code before anyone can log in. So even if our credentials are compromised, we have that additional layer of security which can help us help us not getting into situations of account compromise. Misconfigured network connectivity again is a very common security breach. Not a very common security breach, a common thing that people miss out on, and security breach, a lot of security breach occurs because of that. Data storage has been exposed to internet, and again logging and monitoring. So as I mentioned earlier, so we should always be protective. Okay, so protective is one thing, so it will have some loophole or the other, because security is an ever growing aspect, so we can't be perfect there. So to overcome that, we should have some detective mechanism as well. And how do we achieve detective mechanism? Basically by having logging and monitoring tools enabled. So by logging and monitoring tools, I mean that we should be notified on certain events, right? Certain critical events in account, like say a lot of EC2 instances are getting spinned up maybe, or a lot of high tier instances are getting spinned up, or someone is continuously accessing your S3 bucket. So all these events should be logged, and your admins or your security team should be continuously notified of that. So even if they are not able to prevent that attack, they are at least aware of that attack because of these notifications, and they can try and take actions as soon as possible, right? So at least, first thing is to prevent, but if prevention will not be 100% proof, it will not work 100% of the time. So at least have a backup detective mechanism in place, right? So that's where logging and monitoring comes into picture. And then we already understood the Security Hub findings. So how it is showing us the data. It's showing us data per resource, right? So this is what I had screenshots of. And then comes the pricing part, right? So everything will come at a cost, and Security Hub again will come at a cost. Currently, it's quite, I would say it's fairly priced. So and the major price involved here is for the config. So Security Hub is comparatively cheaper, because the thing it is doing is it is just mapping your configuration to standards, right? So it's not doing a lot in itself, and it is doing, but not as lot as compared to AWS config. So since this is a prerequisite of Security Hub that we should have AWS config enabled, So the config cost will also come into picture, and it is priced at $0.003 per configuration item recorded. So what is a configuration item? So any event occurring in your account. So say you created an S3 bucket, then you modified it. So everything is considered as a single configuration item. So you pay $0.003 per item such for such a event in your account. And then there is the Security Hub pricing. So for these checks that we had, so for all the findings, for the first 100K, we have 0.001, and then it considerably lowers down as we have more number of checks configured in our account. And then for the ingested findings, so what are ingested findings? So basically all the ingestions from other services like Inspector, Macy, Guard Duty, whatever we have. So for first, and also the third party tools that that can be integrated with Security Hub. So for the first 10,000 events, it's free. And for over 10,000 events, it's like 0.300003, right? So quite fairly priced. And just to denote that, I have a sample bill calculation, and this is with respect to a medium to a large size organization, I would say, right? So consider an organization with 20 accounts, and assuming that there are 100K events that are taking place. So maybe we can consider that 100K events per month. So the config cost will sum up to $300. So this is the majority of the cost involved here, because config is the one which is doing the major job here of collecting all configurations. And when we talk about the security checks, so we have considered 500 security checks for 2 regions and 20 accounts. So given the price is 0.0010 per check, so it's just around $20. And then we are estimating that the third party integrations or ingestions have not been done to such a great extent. So we are just considering 10,000 findings here. And since the first 10,000 findings are free, as per the free tier, that's $0. So the total cost for AWS config, say for 20 accounts, maybe a medium to large scale organization that we have, is $320. I would say this is quite fairly priced, but I mean, AWS will surely reduce the price going forward. I mean, AWS config price has already been reduced a lot. It was quite, I mean, even more costlier earlier, but I guess as the time progressed, the cost has come considerably down. So I hope it will come a little more down as time progresses. Okay. What about the advanced features? So Security Hub currently supports, as we saw, that it supports very less benchmarks, very less security policies. So it's the need of the hour to have third-party integrations. So that integration is advanced feature that we have. And also an auto remediation setup can be integrated with the help of Security Hub, right? So what auto remediation means here is, so when we saw the finding currently, so when we went to the remediation link, so it it displayed a set of steps that we need to follow to remediate that finding, right? So that was a manual step that we had to do. So either ourselves or maybe our security team would have to manually go to each, say, misconfigured service, go to the configuration and update it as per the compliance settings, right? That is a lot of manual work. And if you are a big organization, it's a lot of work to do, right? So even that can be automated. So how it can be automated is like Security Hub events are continuously collected by the event bridge. So using the event bridge, what we can do is, for certain events, we can set up triggers. The triggers can be on AWS Lambda functions, which can have your custom code, which will automatically update your configuration, right? So just to give you an example here, a very simple example. So suppose you have findings saying that S3 bucket encryptions should be enabled, right? And few of your buckets are failing. So what will happen is, so when this entry is recorded or a finding is recorded in the Security Hub, the event bridge will have this event, right? So what we can do is, for this event, we can trigger a Lambda function, which will have a simple Python or any code, or maybe Node.js code using the Boto 3 SDK. And what that code will be doing is, it will be querying the S3 buckets and maybe update the security configuration of encryption. Say, I guess we have a method saying update bucket encryption, something like that, right? So we can enable it there, and that's what the Lambda basically does. And the process of actually enabling encryption on your buckets is automated through this process. So maybe we can, as per the audience request, we can look out for such a session in the future as well. But yeah, I mean, there is a lot of things that can be automated here. So this is what we did not cover in the session, that is the automation of these things. But yeah. And then finally, the limitations. First is the setup. It is quite a lot. So for a large organization, we'll have to write a CLI script basically to enable Security Hub, because manually it's a lot of a big task to enable it in each and every region. In-house policy and benchmark support is limited. So the number of benchmarks that we have currently is only 2, and the number of policies too are limited. And the third limitation is no scan now option available for the user. The user has to wait for the default schedule for the updated data to be reflected, right? So these are what the limitations are. So these are the references, and yeah, I'm open to question. I guess I went overboard, but we'll wait for questions now, maybe 5-10 minutes, if there are any.
Actually, what I'd like to do, just while people think of questions, is we'll do our swag trivia. And Chris, do you want to ask your question? And we'll set it up by saying the way we do this is we'll ask a question, and I promise you this time it's not sci-fi. And answer in the chat, and first person in the chat wins. And what you'll win is one of our, oh, I don't have it, but a mug like this, but with our logo on it. And there was one person that I still owe a mug to. There we have some difficulties with that, but I will get to it. But anyway, Chris, away you go.
Awesome, thank you, Brian.
Okay.
So tonight's trivia.
Sorry to interrupt, Chris. I mean, before you move ahead, so I mean, I guess we are done with the session. And I would like to, I mean, really thank AWS UG Boston for this opportunity. So it was great talking here. Thanks, Brian, as well for reaching. I mean, I reached out to Brian, and Brian was, I mean, more than, I mean, it was great to have, I mean, great for me to present at AWS UG. And I hope it was an insightful session, and it may have help you with a little knowledge, right? So yeah, that's what I wanted to say.
Absolutely, thank you so much. And we're already getting responses on the survey, very well received. I know it's unbelievably late for you, so we just want to thank you so much. So get some sleep, man.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. Okay, over to you, Chris. Thanks a lot.
Awesome, thank you very much. And thank you for the great presentation. So today's question is going to be, when was Security Hub introduced to AWS? We're looking for the year, but bonus points if you can get the month as well. I'll let you know when I see the right answer in chat.
Chris, I think we have a winner.
Yep, we do. So Arthur Greenwald, it looks like 2019. That's the first time I saw 2019. And it was June of 2019. So congratulations, Arthur. Shoot a message out to Brian and he will coordinate shipping out that mug to you.
Thank you.
Does someone have something that contradicts? Was that the private? Yeah, so that was in preview. All right, so preview, that is in preview. I guess I should have clarified and said in public. The date I was referring to was the 2019 public date. So Michael, I do see that you caught the preview announcement there. Michael,
send me your email as well, and I'll get something going your way.
Sorry about that.
So, okay, so we really thank you all. We really love you to do the survey, and we'll have hopefully another great talk scheduled in 2 weeks, and we have a bunch of ideas bubbling. But as always, send us your ideas if you want to talk. If you want to give an hour talk, a 10-minute talk, a 1-minute here I am talk, all of that's great. And I think that's all she wrote.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone.
Yep. Thank you, guys. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.